you can hear me. Just a few comments before we start. Um, Friends of mine took a look at that syllabus and said, "I'm just going to burn it and roast marshmallows." Uh, the thing about it is, I've been to Vienna several times in Central Europe and that, and there is so much material. This class could be a whole year almost. But what I want to do is introduce you to high points. There are 450 images, there are 25 video sections, and a lot of material. And so that's why I've given you the complete skeleton for the class. You have it all there and an extensive bibliography and some of the new books that I was using in my research. Well, if you want to take a month to read them, fine, or you can use them as a doorstop because they weigh about 4 pounds each. But it is all there. Anyway, great to be back with you guys. 2 years ago, I happened to meet a San Francisco sidewalk and ended up with a hip fracture. But we all, I mean, I'm with a very amenable group, and so forth. And now I'm 87 years old, so we're hanging in there still. Yeah, and the dark glasses, I just finished part of a cataract operation. I thought, let's get the science out of the way, and so forth. Are you on life support? No, I'm not on life support. Uh, I don't know what support I'm on, but anyway, hang in there, guys. The material is incredible. I've been to Vienna 8 times. I've been to Prague 18 times, Budapest 3 or 4 times, Warsaw. We have a lot to talk about, and I will interject personal comments along the way. But the content is very, very heavy, and there's a lot to look at. So just wanted to get everything out in advance for you. And we'll get some time. Everything is run by the clock here. It makes Mussolini look retarded. So, but we will. My comments are often a little surreal, but hang in there. I'm not going crazy. The thing is that we'll try to take a break 10 to 11 and always try to break about 20 to 12. Here's the major domo. All this technical stuff. Listen, I'm technologically retarded. I know it. What am I? It's like I and technology are like a monkey and a banana, but we're getting it set. Yeah. Okay. I'm ready for blast off then. And uh, we have a lot to look at. And as I said before, when I got into this class and following, Paris, Berlin, and modernity, I didn't realize what I was getting into because those 30 years in Vienna were absolutely unbelievable. And that's why you have this syllabus. And I want you to look through it too, because it also explains the psychological states of mind of the Viennese. It was an incredible explosion. They lose an empire, they end up as a republic. But we'll have a lot of things to talk about. So here we panoramic view of Venice, capital of the Habsburg monarchy, and the dual realm of Austro-Hungary for about 51 years. In this painting, the city of Vienna and the surrounding countryside, two majestic birds of prey fly overhead, representing the double-headed eagle and its heraldic reference on the Habsburg crest. The Danube is shown as a blue line in the distance, while white accents indicate streets, squares, traffic areas, and the great Ringstrasse. We'll be talking about that. Now, if my German gets off a little bit, I know that there's somebody who's going to correct it. And if any of you have an Austrian family background in that, we are going to be discussing the recipe for the Zuckertorte. I, I was just hoping maybe we'll do a GoFundMe. We want them sent from Vienna for us for the last day of class, but we'll see. But squares and the Ringstrasse planned in the 1850s to replace where the original city walls were. Okay, that's it. That's Vienna. Crisis, society, culture, and modernity. This idealized panorama of Vienna in 1873 clearly defines the major buildings of the Ringstrasse district. from the old central core, the inner city, the Innenstadt, marked by St. Stephen's Cathedral shown in the distance. In the foreground are the Karlskirche, the Palais Schwarzenberg, and the lower Belvedere. I know several of you have probably been to Vienna, so I'm like a second-rate tour guide. Where the old city walls were located, the Ringstrasse forms a horseshoe that connects to the Danube Canal. So you have the Danube Canal, you have the Danube, and the Ringstrasse, which is connecting everything. Now, let's go on to this. Here is a map of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And when I mentioned Austro-Hungarian, remember that only existed for 51 years. And we'll explain how that crisis came into being. We can begin to see what would occur once the various sections of the countries that made up the empire reverted to their own national identities and geography. And that was one of the big problems. We'll discuss it. The following new states formed themselves in part or in full out of the old Habsburg lands: Austria, Czechoslovakia, I'm using the old term rather than Czech Republic, Hungary, and the state of Slovenes, Croats, Serbs, and finally Poland. Some territory went to Romania and Italy. At one point, the Habsburg Empire represented 20% of the European landmass. Now, the Russians are over there off to the side. We're not discussing the Russians, but 20% and so forth. And so we have to realize that the empire in 1914 covered 261,000 square miles. This is the empire. And that the population of the empire was 52 million. So when you go to Vienna, you're looking at the empire city that once was the focus for 52 million people. After World War I, Austria became a republic with Vienna as its capital. The population was reduced at that time to about 6.5 million in 1916, and the landmass was reduced to about 32,000 square miles. So there's incredible shrinkage from that other situation. Now, in this next image, let's look at some of the people that make it up. Just one side note, when a circular went out from the court to the empire, it went out in 11 languages. 11 languages. And finally, the empire was made up of like 18 or 19 different national groups, each wanting their own independence. So between 1890 and 1918, Vienna was a true melting pot of nationalities. And in the middle of a population boom, Vienna was the fourth largest city in Europe. It was London, Paris, Berlin, Vienna. People gravitated to this glittering European capital with its pervasive atmosphere of world-weary decadence and denial. And I've given you a list of all the emotional states the Austrians were going through. People came from 16 different countries with mixed languages, cultures, customs, and ideas, all fused together in varying degrees. One example, I mean, it's just incredible when we go back into this. Vienna had over 200 newspapers. And when an imperial decree, as I said, was sent from the court, it was written 11 languages. The complexity, richness, and problems all contributed to this amazing and major period of modernity. Problems of states of mind, the states of mind are in your syllabus within complex liberal and conservative societal arrangements. Okay, let's go to the next. Here it is. That's the Austrian Empire. The heraldic crest of the multinational Austro-Hungarian monarchy formed in 1867. Empress Elizabeth was very partial to the Hungarian. She was sort of in the Austrian court. Well, we'll talk about her. That's a real number. I use the name number in the same way that maybe an Asian language would use tonality when you say, oh God, is that a number? Or you can say, oh, it's a real number. We're really excited. So think of that in your mind. Okay. German state of Prussia continued to expand during the 19th century and formed a confederation of over other German states, which become a powerful force against Austria. And with the Battle of Königsgrätz, In 1866, Austria lost out to the German Confederation. So that is the big shift. In 1867, Habsburg compromised with Hungary. So they lost out. So they're making a compromise with Hungary, divided the country into two halves, forming the Austro-Hungarian dual monarchy. With its power in Central Europe reduced, Austria turned its attention to the Balkans. Warning light, big problems, stay away. A region rife with political and ethnic tensions that would propel the continuation of the disaster, really, of World War I. There's a problem with the Balkans. They've hated each other for 1,000 years. So you stay away from that. And the Serbs are ready to destroy the empire. We'll be discussing that. Okay, now we got a little richness. Here you go, guys. This is St. Michael's wing of the Hofburg facing the square. The Hofburg is the former principal palace of the Habsburg dynasty located in the center of Vienna. Planned by the great Baroque architect Fischer von Erlach, it serves a connection between the Winter Riding School, I have a real treat for you, and the Imperial Chancellery Wing. So this is the connecting link. This is a photo. This is the interior of the riding school. Now, let me fill you in on this. The Achenbach collection has 18th century engraving of this particular riding school, and the Austrians would also use it for parties, large parties and that. So there are the lineup of the Lippenzanners, and so this photo, okay, riding school. This is located between the Michaelerplatz and the Josefsplatz inside the Hofburg, with the trainers, the riders, and the Lippenzanner horses all lined up. Their yearly budget is 15 million euros. And we're going to see a 4-minute clip of those horses performing, and it's a real treat. It was designed by Fischer von Erlach the Younger and was built between 1729, 1735 with 46 columns that formed a viewing gallery for the Viennese nobility. Performances with the highly trained Lippenzanner horses take place in this winter riding school. It is the only institution in the world that has practiced for more than 450 years the art of dressage or dressage. Dressage, I want to explain, we're going to see it, it's wonderful, is a unique discipline of riding a horse as prescribed movements and patterns are created. So let's go on to the next. I might have hit this a second time. There we go. We maybe need the sound. Oh, it's going to start. You have 4 minutes. They're beautiful. And this is when they were in London.
Hi, Ryan. I'm good. I'm good. Well, sort of, yeah, but your call's important to me. Yeah, I'm at the house and I haven't tried the hot tub. I gather you tested it and it works and the heating's working. Okay.
Well, the horses are working, but watch some of this stuff. It's beautiful. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Quoted by the ghost. Okay.
Huh.
You had to see this. You had to. Mm. And the writer's dress is basically 18th century. $400. So beautiful to watch. I have to cut you off. We've got to go to the emperor. So anyway, oh, I knew that would happen, but you have to go to Vienna to pick up the last bit. So on the left is a painting, 1905, of Emperor Franz Joseph by William List. It was made for the assembly hall in the main building of the Austrian Postal Savings Bank Center. We're going to get to that. In the center is a portrait of his wife in the back, and we will get to Sisi, showing, and this shows Franz Joseph in his study in Schönbrunn Palace. He was the perfect nerd, if you might say, and holding everything together. Now, the portrait on the right is of his friend and companion, Katharina Schratt, a young and popular actress at the Burgtheater. Their friendship of 20 years was probably platonic, but during this time, gifts were exchanged between them. This close bond was a strong emotional support for him for the rest of his life. And even his wife, the Empress, referred to her as the friend. She wanted to, I mean, Sisi was all over the map. We'll get to her. But the point about it is, she felt that he needed some kind of companionship. And this beautiful young actress at the Burgtheater was the one who would be the one with him. Now, here are three portraits of Empress Elizabeth. Three portraits of our CC Elizabeth, Empress of Austria and Hungary, one of the most glamorous and beautiful women of her day. And I mean that seriously. On the left is a portrait of her after her marriage to Franz Joseph at the age of 16, a 16-year-old thrown into that court. And in the center is the famous portrait of her painted by Franz Xavier Winterhalter. That's the patron she's always known by. The portrait of her on the right, all in black, was done shortly before the death of her son in 1889. I have to share one moment. There are moments of the past that are going to haunt me and haunt you. Years ago, I was at a private carnival party in Venice during Carnival, and somebody said, Empress Sisi is coming. And I said, what do you mean? And Empress Sisi came, a drag number from Brussels, all turned out. I'll tell you, where are the standards today? Okay. Anyway, she was assassinated in Geneva by an Italian anarchist in 1898. She had never taken to the constraints of court life. She hated it and would spend long periods of time away from Vienna. Her looks, vanity, narcissism, independence, and other physical beings were really important. She had a private gym in the palace that she would use to exercise with. And you can imagine the combing of that hair that fell down several feet. That's what mattered to her. And mental instability in some ways and wanderlust would take her from country to country. So that's what we're dealing with. She was away from him. She loved him, but she didn't want that world. And there are problems that will be coming up. Now, these are on the left is Franz Joseph's reception room within the palace, and on the right is his wife's dining room. Now, these are colors. I'm giving you a color test for when you're in Central Europe. The colors of white, red, and gold that define these rooms can be found in several Austrian aristocratic interiors throughout the empire. And if you're in Prague, this is also, actually, I'm a tour guide in disguise, but when you're in Prague, go to the German Opera House because it's in these colors, the red, the whites, the gold. So those colors were spread throughout the Habsburg Empire. Now, here is a court ball in 1900. Only the highest aristocracy was invited to the ball at the court, where society could proclaim its love for the imperial house by being close to Franz Joseph. In contrast to the secondary ball or court ball, included the diplomatic corps, the army, ennobled members of the middle class, and senior members of the civil service. The ball was placed within the spreading complex of the royal palace known as the Hofburg. Here there could be a ceremonial encounter with the sovereign shown in the middle of this group. He's surrounded by all of these people. Now, we're moving from this court ball because I wanted you to get the flavor. You can't understand modernity unless you get the historical background. Okay, this is a portrait on the left of the Austrian Crown Prince Rudolf and his mistress, the Baroness Mary Vetserva, and the hunting lodge at Meyerling, which we'll get to. Okay, now this is when the tragedy really begins. Wrapped in the enigma of a double suicide, the death of these two cannot be thought of as a romantic and tragic ending between two lovers. I want to clarify that. You know, it's the romance of the suicide, it's the romances of the death. No, there are other things going on. The truth was very, very different. This Meyerling affair was the culmination of a story of family secrets, mental instability, blackmail, venereal disease, and political treason. So that's behind the romance. Can I add any more words? So here's the deal with the Crown Prince. A completely disillusioned, he was a liberal, his father was a conservative. We got problems there. A completely disillusioned, morphine addicted Crown Prince who knew that he could never be the emperor, and a young, lighthearted flirt who was one of his numerous lovers. He had several lovers. He was having affairs with all the court women and that, and they were all spreading around venereal disease. And he even asked some of his lady friends, could they join him in suicide? And they said, no, I don't think so. I want a few more years. But here was this young, beautiful woman who was at that time his mistress. And so they were caught up in this final desperate act. So that's what we can call it, a desperate act. A total disappointment to his father, the Crown Prince's views were in direct contrast to those held by Franz Joseph. And his profligate lifestyle with many affairs, which resulted in venereal disease, completely dismayed his father. His mother is off somewhere entertaining herself. Father is there, and he has this situation. When Franz Joseph found out that his son and heir had killed himself, he shot her first, and then he shot himself about 4 hours later, had killed himself and murdered his mistress. His death was portrayed as a temporary derangement, and everything was covered up to the point they tore down the hunting lodge, and now there is a church in its place. And the high altar is where the suicide took place. So you can't see that old hunting lodge at all. So I wanted to clarify everything with you. Forget romance. We have to deal with hygiene. Okay, anyway, now we're getting into it. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand heir presumptive to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife was committed by a Bosnian Serb. The Serbs hated the Austrians. They wanted that to be completely disregarded. I think the Serbs are having some difficulties today, if I remember. But I said, when you get into the Balkans, watch out. And his wife is committed by a Austrian Serb nationalist during a visit to Sarajevo on 28th of June in 1914. This would trigger the final events leading up to World War I and the ultimate end of the Habsburg Empire. Germany and Austro-Hungarians against the Russians, French, British, and Americans. So that's what we have going in there. That was one of the pictures, and that was and the carriage is still in one of the museums in Vienna. Okay, let's get to the construction of the monumental city changes that were taking place in Vienna during the second half of the 19th century. So when you go to Vienna today, you've got to realize that nearly all of those incredible monumental buildings built for an empire, second half of the 19th century. I mean, they're just incredibly amazing. And so you'll see what the young artists were reacting against. I'm going to drag you through historicism, and you'll probably say, please, I need help. Um, but these are the changes that were taking place in Vienna during the second half of the 19th century. Okay, here is part of the Ringstrasse. By the way, Vienna has the most environmental vegetation out of any city in the world. And we're going to see some of this in the parks. And then, of course, if you just wanted to move out of the center, you could always go to the Vienna Woods and have drinks and go into the inns and that in the Vienna Woods. And also, this is something else that I've followed for several years. Vienna is considered the most livable city in the world when you add all the pieces together and so forth. So now that most of the old Nazis have died off, I guess things might be okay. So the photo showing the Ringstrasse, the Parliament building on the right with its two-chambered plan, which we will discuss, and in the distance, the Art History Museum and the Natural History Museum. They're opposite each other. We'll get to that. In 1857, Vienna's medieval walls came down and a major beautification project was started, a project that would define the Vienna that we know today. On the ramparts where the old city walls had existed, the Ringstrasse was built. When finished, the ring would create a 2-mile loop around the old city, and due to its length, the ring had sections with names connected to the various parts. I know those of you would remember this in Vienna, such as the Schubert ring and the Kantner ring. So they had to break it apart. Where am I? Oh, in the middle of this two-mile ring somewhere. No, you're not. You're in a section of the ring. For Franz Joseph, it was to be lined with monuments reflecting his absolute rule. But after this major loss to the Prussians in Königsgrätz in 1866, the monarchy began to lose its power. This was the blow. The Prussians were coming up, the Austrians were going down. And the new Austrian constitutional monarchy rose with new buildings representing secular culture and the rule of law as conceived by, and here it comes, a newly powerful bourgeoisie. This was happening all the way across. I guess we had it in the United States too. People with money and the old guard was sort of losing out. And then American mothers with money were trying to get their daughters over to Europe to get a noble title. But what was happening is this. You find the rise in Europe and like England and also America of a wealthy upper middle class. They now had the money. They now had the power. So, okay, the aristocrats are there, but we've got the power. And they were this new bourgeoisie. From 1860s to 1890s, many opulent grand mansions and public buildings were erected along the ring in eclectic historical styles. And eclecticism and historicism are two terms we're only going to drown in briefly. Eclecticism such as classicism, Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque architecture. So they were stylistically stopped in a way, so they went back into the past. Now, I was going to say to you, what might be an historicism building in San Francisco? City Hall. It's the part of that is French Renaissance. I mean, we're going to break it apart into pieces, but in City Hall and the Opera House has its own kind of neoclassical elements. The new boulevard, with its variety of imposing private and public buildings, sumptuous landscape gardens, squares, and numerous statues, not only transformed the face of Vienna, but also became synonymous with the confident area during which Austria's constitutional government was born. Now, another thing, when they built the Ringstrasse, they did not use cobblestones. They used paving stones. Why? I'll give you the example. 1848 was that huge revolution of the proletariat that was spreading across Europe. The revolution didn't follow, but the Ringstrasse is being built 2 or 3 years later. And if you're a revolutionary, what better to have than a cobblestone to throw? And the Austrians said, no, no cobblestones at all. They're going into monumental sections, so nobody can throw cobblestones at us. Now let's get, I mean, it's there, it's reality. So let's get into historicism, which sort of defines large parts of the 19th century. In the 19th century, there developed a new movement that comprised artistic styles that drew their inspiration by creating in various ways previous architectural styles. That's what Orientalism, historicism is. This was especially true in the realm of architecture. By combining or replicating different previous styles, new aesthetics were created and a large variety of possible designs and interpretations were offered. It would be wonderful, well, it wouldn't be offered because you'd lose your mind, would be go around the world in that and figure out historicism building and what they're composed of, but you go crazy. This new historical movement was characterized by an interpretation not only of Greek and Roman classicism, but also of succeeding stylistic areas, Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque, and others under numerous titles, which were largely considered equivalent. The global influence of historicism was especially strong from the 1850s forward, and it can be viewed and related to the rise of the bourgeoisie and the opening development of the Industrial Revolution. Now, here's the Parliament building. You can all see all the greenery. This is the Parliament building, the Ringstrasse, and the parks, which show the openness and intelligent urban planning of this suburb and defining part of the city. Let's get a little bit closer to this and I'll explain why it was chosen. Now we're going to go and let's go back for a minute and look at the building on the left. Vienna's Parliament building, or Temple of Law, is the classical temple facade of the central core, with a statue of Athena, Greek goddess of wisdom and protector of the city, in the foreground. It is the middle of the famous Palace Athena fountain. On the right is an aerial view let me see. On the right is an aerial view of showing the plaza in the front and the three major parts of the building. Constructed between 1874 and 1883, this building housed the chambers of the House of Representatives and the House of the Aristocrats on either side. So this dialogue is taking place. Its intensification is happening in the second part of the 19th century. And so when they decided we've got to build these buildings, stay away from the Habsburgs. Now, this is the wealthy bourgeoisie that's now dictating. We're going to historical sires, but we're not using Baroque because that's with the Habsburgs. So I'll take you into, this is inside the Parliament building. There it is. And it is based on Greek and Roman prototypes. They said, if we're going to be a temple of law, we're going back into the ancient world, scrap the Baroque. So what you have here is very, very interesting. I have a pointer here. That's like a temple facade. That's a theatrical facade you might have found in ancient Rome. You have the half semicircle and what would have been the playing area of the ancient Roman theaters and so forth. And above that, you can see at the top, that is a kind of canvas awning. In ancient Rome, in order to protect the people from the heat and those Colosseum theaters, sailors would be on the top of these poles and they would draw these huge canvas awnings over the open theaters and that. So what they're doing, they're aping the ancient world in order to create a new kind of way of looking at society. And so it's really, really quite incredible. And when we look at these pictures, wait till I show you the interior of the building in Budapest. There's the money. You know, when you look at this today, you have 52 million people in that empire, and think of the money involved when you look at these buildings. And as I said, it's based on a semicircle playing area, and in the back, it might as well have a theatrical facade from ancient Greece or Rome. The architect had used the birthplace of democracy, ancient Athens or ancient Rome, as the best style for a new democratic government. Both chambers of the legislature were united within a single monumental building of splendor. To add to this monumental feeling, the columned entrance was situated on the second floor to suggest the illusion of even greater height. It has over, this is it, it has over 100 rooms, including libraries, lobbies, dining rooms, bars, and even a gymnasium, just to give you the extent of this. And so we have to keep this in mind. Now, here's another view. There's a beautiful view of the Ringstrasse and the vegetation. So that's when I said Vienna has about the most vegetation of any city in the world. You have the Volkspark, and in the distance, you have the two museums, the art history and the natural sciences. I sometimes slip into the German of the Kunsthistorisches Museum. We'll get to that soon, and I'll mention a cafe or two, because after the Kunsthistorisches Museum, you need help. You need food. Okay. And the natural history with their different there they are over in the distance. They're on opposite sides of each other. But notice in this case, the extensive use of trees, lawns, and greenery, adding to the total livability of the city of Vienna. Now, this is partly going on in Vienna. Let's see about the Hungarians. You know, the Hungarians now, they have their own sort of world and so forth. How many of you have seen this with Viking cruises? Yes, all the time. I kept saying, if I see one more view of the exterior of the parliament houses in Budapest, we got to do something else. But if you get those Viking cruises, this is what you're going to get. This Hungarian parliament building was from across the Danube, and as a new member and one half of the dual monarchy, Hungary needed a parliament building, and Budapest at this time was united by combining three cities, Buda, Óbuda, and Pest. In 1873, so a representative parliament could be built and planned. It was situated on the eastern bank of the Danube. So you've got the outsides, think of the tours. Now we're going to go inside. I mean, these interiors are incredible, but I keep coming back to they had the money. This is the interior. That's the grand staircase inside the parliament building, and that's where they sat. I mean, it's the richness is amazing, and yet it all has those historical connections and those historical ramifications. Designed in a neo-Gothic style with a Renaissance revival dome. I mean, this is pastiche. Talk about pastiche. It opened in 1902. It contains a 16-sided central hall with huge chandeliers adjoining it. So that was inside, and that's what you see when you go to Budapest. Okay, now here is we're now going to look at the art history museum. And what we have in this case is built in a Renaissance revival style. This is the staircase for the Art History Museum. It is one of the most important art museums in the world. And I think of those of you who've been there, after a few hours, you say, I need a break. I need something. I need resuscitation. Anyway, one of my favorite rooms there, which I've gone to several times, is the Peter Bruegel room, which is all off by itself. Otherwise, you're just going to drown in those canvases and so forth. Now, here is, so we have the building, we have a drawing there, and this is the grand staircase. And I'm going to talk about the concept of a switchback staircase when we get to it. Okay, now this is the cafe at the top of that grand staircase. Second rate, B cafe. I know we're going to get to really good cafes because you have to know about these. But we have the grand staircase, and I'll mention about that grand staircase. It was a switchback staircase. What do I mean by a switchback staircase? Okay, you're an architect. You have 200 steps to go up. So you go up, but you're going to run out the other side of the building. You go up to a landing, and the staircase splits into two parts and folds back on itself. So you go up the center, you go to a landing, and the staircase splits and folds back on itself. Now, the genesis of that, part of the genesis, comes from a staircase that was designed by the great Italian architect Baldassare Longhena as part of the cloisters of the Church of San Giorgio Maggiore. And it's very interesting. I did my graduate work there on the island of San Giorgio, and I would go up that Longhena staircase, up the center platform, and switch back. And I'm watching the time, but I just want to share one moment with you of being inside. Longhena designed, by the way, one of the beautiful synagogues in Vienna, and he designed this staircase, which relates to the Palladian cloisters. So in the middle of these two cloisters is a fabulous Longhena art library. You know, all the keys are on velvet tassels from Florence, and it just goes on and on. Well, okay, I was newly introduced to Venice in 1964, and I was doing research in the Longhena Art Library, and all of a sudden I heard Gregorian chant. And I thought, oh my God, we're going down. This is the end. So I ran down the hallways, down the Longhena staircase. It's lightly snowing in the Palladian cloisters, and coming toward me were 20 Italian monks, all in black, carrying red hymnals, led by a very chic Parisian woman, all in leather and fur. French television was making a special on Vienna in winter. Those are images that you can't get ever rid of. So anyway, we'll take a few minutes, but we have more time. Good. So this is the cafe at the top. Take it as a break, but it's second rate. Okay, now these are the views. You can see the landing there with a switchback. And these are the views from that upper area looking down through this oculus. I mean, it's multi-layered. You know, you've got one staircase, you come back to the other, and that's what you see. So that is the grand entrance hall to the Art History Museum in Vienna. You have the oculus there, and there is a mythological feature. I don't know, it's probably Hercules doing a number, but you have to get all these things together. And it's really very beautiful. It is very rich, and it is overwhelming. Well, from here, we're going to the Vienna City Hall, the Wiener Rathaus, built to establish civic pride. Here's the Rathaus. Now, I've got to fill you in. Oh, by the way, if you're a little upset or distraught in Christmas time, I suggest a Christmas visit to Vienna. It's going to be overwhelming. The market's out in front. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, constructed in 1872 and to 83 as the seat of the local government. Now, here's the difference again. It was designed in a neo-Gothic style based on the Gothic architecture of Flemish secular buildings like the Brussels Town Hall. Remember, they're staying away. This is our town hall. We don't want anything to do with the Baroque. So we're going to another location and another historical style. As they had done with the classical style Parliament building, new civic and political control by the Viennese wealthy bourgeoisie meant that this building, like the Parliament, signified freedom from the Habsburgs. We've got the money, we've got the power, we want the freedom. And they chose a style that was away from 600 years of Habsburg rule. Now, we have here's a picture of the City Hall at night and then on a postcard. And I just want to make a few comments about this particular building because it's we might say, too much. Now, we'll do this one before we take a break. This is the interior of the City Hall. The grand staircase on the left follows the Gothic style inside the building. Now, here's where we get to it. The interior spaces are arranged around 7 inner courtyards with a total interior space spread over 30 floors, 2 basements containing over 2,000 rooms. So, and I know, but what the hell is going on? But we have to talk about that empire. 52 million people are connected within these particular buildings. So that gives you an idea of the staircases and a great hall where they could hold parties and celebrations and things like that. We'll have one more slide before we have a brief break. I mean, this is very important, the 10 minutes. And what I want to do is take you on to another building. Now that we've done the City Hall, this is the exterior and interior of the Burgtheater, the mirror of society in Vienna, with the Volkspark in the foreground. Although it opened in 1888, it was completely rebuilt in 1897. I guess they didn't like the architecture or it didn't fit enough people or whatever. But anyway, this is the Burgtheater, and it's built in a Baroque revival style. The building is the National Theater of Austria in Vienna and is the most important German language theater in the world, with a traditional style and speech that typifies Burgtheater performances. When we speak of the various ways in which people speak German, you want to speak of what they call Hochdeutsch, which is stage German, or as you go to London, you want to get that really great English, non-accent English, stage English. But the Hochdeutsch is what is spoken in the Burgtheater, and the tradition is there. And every spring in Berlin, they have the Theatertreffen, where they bring together great productions from some of the German theaters spread out through Europe, and they have a celebration for 3 or 4 weeks, and it is incredible. So what we have in Austria, this is his premier stage for serious drama. It is also one of the very few milieus where aristocrat and commoner regularly mingle. So you have the aristocrats and you have the commoners. And we're going to talk about the way in which these grand staircases were built within these buildings. Why do you need a grand staircase? One staircase is a staircase. The point about it is showing off. Showing off. If you've ever been to Paris and been inside the opera house, that's where it began to start. You have a wealthy class that wants to show itself off. And, if you have a wife who's dressed to the nines, as you might say, you want to walk up those staircases, wave to people up, wave to people below. It was a procession. You might think the performance began in the lobby before they even got to the performance, because that's what was going on. And I have to tell you one little comment. When I gave this class on Paris and discussing the world of the great French courtesans, there was a theater presentation, and a woman came over to one of the courtesans. Now, they were dressed in the very finest, and she said to the woman, "Oh, I think your dress is absolutely beautiful." And she returned to the lady and said, "Thank you. I'll mention that to your husband when I have lunch with him tomorrow." American Puritanism just rose up in a blast. Anyway, it's 10 to 11. We get a 10-minute break, but I operate by semi-Mussolini time. What was that?
The horses, Lippens they're born black.
Are they really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, double check, but I'm certain they're born black.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Fascinated by the powerhouse.
That comes later. That's the 20s.
Yeah, where did we go to see? There's a museum of applied art.
Yes.
Is there
Yes.
anything else like that?
Well, we're going to get to some of the buildings. Yeah, the new architectural developments. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little button at the top, I think, Jimmy, right there, on and off. Yeah, we'll get to. By the way. Okay, good. Yeah, I'll watch it. Yeah, good. Couple more minutes. Uh-huh. Oh, yes, okay. Yeah, let me, we'll talk quickly.
So. Mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, uh-huh.
For high tech.
Yeah,
Bought this company in Vienna.
yeah,
The company I work for had nothing.
yeah, uh-huh,
So I said to
uh-huh,
the guy that was
Yeah.
working on, I said, what's gonna happen to those employees? Because there's no other.
Mhm.
Somebody's there, and
Mhm.
how do they advance?
Yeah.
And he says, well, you know, probably several of them will want to relocate to San Jose.
Okay,
And I looked at him, I said, Sean, have you ever been to Vienna?
yeah,
I said, no. I said, Sean, we're gonna go next week.
Yeah.
And I said,
didn't want to reload it. Okay, you're right. Anyway, I've got to start calling the group back. All right, guys, we have 4 or 5 minutes before blast off. Let's start to assemble. Oh my God, yes.
and then we
Yes,
went, and he
yeah.
went,
I
okay.
understand. Yeah. Come on, I want to keep you guys on track. Otherwise, I get terrible notices.
Said that you and if anything, she underestimated.
Oh. Well, I have a lot to share. Thank you very much. Yes, come on, let's think of seats and let's think of when you were in kindergarten. Let's get to the chairs. Yeah. I have to be neurotic on time with the Fromm because they said, you're over 5 minutes. People want lunch. Okay, back. Yep. I mean, yes. Okay. Well, Mhm.
Also put the Spanish writing.
yes. That's it. Yes, the vendor ends. How can we get rid of this? Yeah, Carla, how do we get rid of this?
Got it.
Yeah. And get rid of this. No, I don't really want them. No. I'd rather not have them. Yes, come on, we're gonna assemble, guys. I don't have a gong, but I have a voice. So yeah, come on, let's get back in. 2 or 3 more minutes to blast off. Yeah. Yeah, so we need to get those configurations together.
2018.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's super. So yeah, as long as we can get it in place. To go back. Okay, there we are. Okay, we're just about ready, but I have some information that I was just given. Shh. You'll all get lunch. You'll get your naps. You'll get whatever. Anyway, one of the gentlemen in the class came and told me that the Lippenzaner horses are born black. I don't know why. It's a fascinating idea. And to turn into those beautiful white, but aren't they gorgeous? I mean, they're unbelievable. And there are 2 names to that. They have the Winter Riding School, which is in Vienna. They also call it the Spanish Riding School because the Habsburg Empire extended into Spain. So it came from Spain and then was adapted over into the Habsburg Empire. They had their tentacles all over for Europe. But the big problem with the Habsburg is, I just want to share a genetic statement with you. They decided that they were only going to marry each other within the family. Now, those of you who are geneticists say, what the? So you have that terrible Habsburg jaw. And if you follow the painting, you've got that jaw that looks like a plate. Genetic inbreeding. No, no, no. But that's what they did. We have to keep it pure. Yeah, purely genetically screwed up. So anyway, that was the deal I thought I wanted to share with you. And that was the inbreeding, but didn't they know? No, no, they did not know. Now, here's a period photograph of the card of the Vienna State Opera House. It was originally known as the Vienna Court Opera. Built from 1861 to 1869 in the neo-Renaissance style, it is one of the greatest opera houses in the world and was the first major building on the Ringstrasse. The opening premiere was Mozart's Don Giovanni. Gustav Mahler was the most famous conductor working during this period, and we will talk about Mahler in greater detail when we discuss anti-Semitism in Vienna, and that's a real wound. Now, let's move inside the great opera house. That's inside. So this is what I mean by staircases. You might say, Bill, I want to take a staircase tour of Europe. So, we start with Paris, we do Budapest, we go on and on and on. But remember, built for show, built to show off the new moneyed class. The staircase, like the grand staircase of the Paris Opera House, that was the genesis, and other European opera houses. The opera house in Budapest is partly based on the opera house in Paris. It was designed for opulent show to give the elaborately dressed rich audience members an opportunity to display their wealth and position in society. I think we have that today too. I got more money than you do. So what are you driving? I don't know what. One could say that the performance staged out on the architectural levels began before the curtain went up. So think of two areas of performance. We have the official one once the curtain goes up, but we have the performance going on those staircases. And if you don't think people were eyeing each other, go to the San Francisco opening of the opera in that. I want you to go, and I want you to come back with a collection of facelifts. But the point about it is that people go to look, they want to, and women love dressing up. Come on, guys, it's great. And to dress up and go and to eye each other and so forth. I have another French courtesan joke to tell you. There were two of the top courtesans in Paris sort of fighting it out. And one of them was given some rich jewelry in that, trying to outdo the other one. So the next night, the one that was a little bit higher, she appeared wearing one piece of jewelry around her neck and her servants carrying the rest of her jewels. I have to tell you one other noble story too of how women can do each other in. There were two women, they had this battle going on. I think it was in the 18th century, and one hated the other, but she was invited for dinner. She found out what they were wearing for dinner. And when their guests came, all the serving women and so forth were in the dresses of the guests. I mean, this is killer, but this is how to be vicious. Okay, now, for example, this particular, let's go on. So anyway, the performance is out in the front and performance on the stage. Now I'm going to strangulate you before we really get to the other worlds. Okay. A painting by Hans Mackart Studio, 1885. Now, let me explain how this fits in. Hans Mackart, who epitomized the historical painting style then in vogue, was the most powerful artistic influence of the day. The Mackart style that swept Vienna in the 1870s, remember the 1870s, can be seen in this huge painting of his studio, furnished with oversized canvases, opulent tapestries and carpets, chandeliers made of antlers, and bronze figures. He became the arbiter of interior design for the upper classes in Vienna. So if you were on the make in the 1870s, you hired him to design your interiors. No wonder we had to wipe all of that stuff out and start with a blank slate by 1900. His paintings were usually large scale and the themes filled with historical motifs. Interested in all of the arts, he worked with the ideal of a visual Gesamtkunstwerk. Now, I'm going to keep coming back to that word, but I've given you a very good definition of the Gesamtkunstwerk. That started with Richard Wagner in Bayreuth. So you can go that way. So when I mention it again, the Germans love pushing everything together, words, and they just link them together. And then you start to say to yourself, damn it, is there a verb to this sentence? So the verb is somewhere at the end. Anyway, Gesamtkunstwerk is divided into three sections. Kunst is art, Werk is work, Gesamt means unification. It's a unification. And we're going to be talking about this once we get into the secessionists and that. So anyway, he was doing this total work of art. And one of his pupils was Gustav Klimt, who worked with him and other Austrian artists, and will pursue these influences when we see Klimt. So this is a Macart painting. This is his studio, and this sort of represents to me Victoriana. This is what Victoria would have loved. Okay, that's his painting, which is called The Entry of Charles V into Antwerp in 1878. It caused a controversy because Charles V was depicted arriving in an elaborate, over-the-top historical procession surrounded by nude virgins. No, 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 no. In those years, it was considered offensive to include nudes in a relatively modern scene. So we're going to be discussing the concept in Vienna of nudity and the way it moves through life. Now, I want to show you another cluttered interior before we can clear our throats. Here's another interior. This is the library of Nicholas Dumba, and it's this expression, the period of we call Victoriana. It's a fear of the void. I don't know if you've ever gone into houses, we might call them hoarders, but the point is it's a fear of the void. And if they had a space, they filled it. We have seen in architectural historicism the overload of architectural elements that cover the exteriors of the buildings, and inside buildings a follow through with frescoes, paintings, wallpapers, and statues that complemented the interiors. Now, the wealthy upper middle classes at the end of the 19th century decorated their interiors so that there were no open places left, no place. And I kept thinking, who does the dusting? Well, they have servants in that. And I always thought, years ago, I was showing some designs for a production of Ibsen's The Doll's House, and it was just over the top like this. And I can say, the wife, I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to dust anymore. Forget it. So think of that as the genesis of the split in Ibsen's A Doll's House, although I warped it. Okay, so this approach can be seen in Viennese interiors, but you could see it in Paris, you could see it in London, you could see it in New York. Think of the great mansions in San Francisco and going to those mansions. It's the same aesthetic of the upper classes. So I've chosen these images in order to draw a complete contrast to the new developments of Viennese modernity. I want you to clearly understand those two particular worlds. Okay, now, this is the Hotel Imperial in Vienna today, and a photograph of the original building. Originally, it was the Würzburg Palace, the palace of the Duke of Würzburg, and then over the years has been added to and added to and added to. So that's one of the great hotels, one of the great and the old hotels in the world to stay in Vienna, but that's the genesis. And they built it, as I said, over time. The building on the left was planned as a city palace for the Duke of Württemberg and his Austrian wife, but it was only lived in for a very brief period of time. In 1873, the palace was converted into a hotel, the Hotel Imperial, a Vienna landmark and one of the great hotels in Europe. I think the doubles are around 1,000. It depends on the season. So if you're there at Christmas time, you might have to come out with a little more shekels. These are the interior lobbies of the Hotel Imperial in Vienna and so forth. And I have to share a joke. A friend of mine is here, but I'm not saying any particular words. People love to go camping. I don't know, maybe you love to go camping. You set it up, you go to the Sierras, you commune with nature. Somebody said, Bill, do you like to go camping? I said, my idea of camping is the lobby of the Hotel Imperial in Vienna. I'll go that far, but I don't think I could do the Sierras and so forth. But we have those combinations here. Now, let's go back to but it's gorgeous. I mean, so this is a thought of your, and this is just a drawing of the time. The Ringstrasse in 1908, a color lithograph created by Theodor Zasche. This section of the Ringstrasse, known as the Kantner Ring Promenade, was where the Viennese elite came to see and be seen. So not only was this occurring in the opera houses and the theaters and that, it was on the streets, people eyeing each other and looking. Some of the names you might recognize in this, Gustav Mahler is in here, Leo Slezak, do you know that dramatic name? And Otto Wagner, the architect. Now, I want to take you into another bit of video. Vienna, here we go. 1908 Vienna, original film. Cars are wonderful. They're thrown in Swan Lake. Spring parade. Okay, I thought we have some more taping of this period too, but it gives you a wonderful opportunity to realize that's an historical moment. Okay, after drowning in eclecticism and historicism, facades of modernism. Here's where the break occurs. This is the big break. Well, now look at the new buildings that would define modernism. a major break with the past and historicism. So we're getting into 1890s, 1900, we're moving into that realm. Now, this is a building designed by Otto Wagner, one of the great architects, and this is the buildings on Linke Weinzeile, 1898-99. No other modern architect left his mark more effectively than Otto Wagner. With universal abilities, he was a master of architecture, town planning, and technology. He took, or I might say, dragged Vienna out of the historicism. He referred to historicism, oh, it's a costume ballet of styles that we've seen in the buildings on the Ringstrasse. And though through his studio, he trained architects who would be influential in the development of 20th century architecture. We'll be moving along later on. Eventually, you're going to get to the 20s in the Bauhaus, but they're all kind of interrelated. Wagner developed a new practical style whose forms were derived from construction and function. Thus, he anticipated the form follows function of 20th century modernism and so forth. So he's defining it. And he's another one. We'll talk about another one too. Both residences show the influence of the Vienna secessionists, where the ornamentation is fused with the two-dimensional surface of the facade. Think of those; they're flat facades. People were becoming hysterical. Said, "My God, there are no eyebrows on these buildings." So all of that dimensional mishmash of historicism was wiped away. This is a flat modernist facade with some decorations to give some ornamentation to it. The house on the right was known as the Majolica House, where the surface is clad with colored floral tiles whose patterns extend across the entire width. Characteristic of Wagner's residences is the narrow, protruding roof line. Think of the roof line. Think of roofs in historicism. You know, oh, we got a dome, we got a French Renaissance dome, we have all of this kind of stuff. Because is the narrow, protruding roof line, which gives the impression of a flat roof when seen from the street. So we have flat roofs, we have flat walls, and that was an incredible shock. So we could say this is it with modernism. Additional notes in regarding to these buildings. They were built with reinforced concrete and brick walls. The two lower floors were commercial spaces. We're going to find this in some of the buildings. And the upper apartment floors had identical windows. We're going to get to those. Thus, all the floors were equally desirable. We could do a spatial analysis of an historical building and what is really desirable and what isn't. The facade was decorated with plant motifs, and the surface of the facade consisted of glazed ceramic tiles. And I want to share a tile story with you. A couple of years ago, I was in Berlin, in the old East Berlin, with the head of the Stanford Center, and we were at the one of the great alleys, you know, I think it's whatever, and where all the great houses were built for the East German aristocrats, if you want to call them aristocrats, the East Germans. And they're very desirable apartment buildings now in Berlin. And our mayor and Karen said to me, you've got to realize all those buildings are covered with Meissen tiles. I thought, what? Meissen tiles covering these buildings? Yes. So the East Berliner group knew how to more or less live. So anyway, let's look at how this new modernism was beginning to spread in all of these particular developments. So remember that clearly: flat roofs, flat walls. We just take it for granted nowadays, but you can get tired of, you know, glass-walled environments and so forth. Okay, here is the Royal Metro Station at Karlsplatz, 1899. And this was designed by Otto Wagner. The stations of the Stadtbahn combine technical infrastructures and metropolitan elegance. He made highly ornamental use of steel and glass. That's something else that's coming in, not the marble in that. Steel and glass in building the stations of the metro. And as a result, Wagner was 10 years ahead of Hector Guimard's famous Parisian stations and their Art Nouveau motifs. So the Austrian was really ahead of Paris in that way. Another some additional notes. We have a steel frame for these buildings, steel now. We have lightweight gypsum blocks for infill and thin marble covering surfaces. Ornamentation, maybe stenciling on the marble, cast iron plant-like forms on the parapet and vaulted roofs were all important parts of the exuberant definition. So it's a change. It's still somewhat busy, but it's sort of elegant and it is light. So this was one of the stops. And now we're moving to the Austrian Postal Savings Bank. And this is it's a wonderful, wonderful change. It was designed by Otto Wagner in 1904, 1906. This building is a thoroughly modern bank building in Vienna. The facade is covered with square marble panels, which are fixed with metal bolts covered with aluminum, a new construction material. They would function as an ornamental cover to the flat facade. You know, how do you deal with a facade? With modernism, you get tired of these facades. Say, do something, do anything. We're getting really tired of them. So this is the exterior of the Postal Savings Bank. Now I'm going to draw you some differentials. This is the inside. How many bank buildings have you been in that look like that? And if I wanted to draw you parallels, go to the Wells Fargo main branch on Market Street. That's the 19th century. That's what the 19th century looked at. So this is a thoroughly modern building designed by Otto Wagner. It's beautiful. I wish there were more banks that maybe look like that today and so forth. So the nucleus of the building is the banking hall. Compared to the solid appearance of the exterior, it has a glass roof on the bank, so you can see your checks, and it's light and it's delicate. The space was to be as pleasant as possible with a floor of glass bricks. I love the floors of glass bricks. I've been in a restaurant in Berlin where the floor was glass bricks that allowed light to filter through the rooms below. So you're walking on a floor of glass bricks and you can see them there and this incredible openness as a bank. The high-tech, for example, on the sides were slender ventilation pipes made of aluminum, new material introduced. It even had a pneumatic mezzanine system. Now we're going back in time several decades. Do you guys remember those pneumatic tubes? Where change is coming, you know, that's it. There's your change. I mean, it was kind of fun, but it was a little bit bizarre, you know, and it dates us. This high-tech building made a statement in which everything was designed by Wagner and nothing was left to chance. Again, the Gesamtkunstwerk. I know you're going to leave this class and say, if I hear that word once more, I'm going to go insane. So this is what Wagner also designed for himself. But this is really stunning. So this is his villa. It's Heidelberg Strasse. In this villa, we can see elements of the past, traditionally incorporated into the white facades with minimal wall decorations and a flat roof, overhanging flat roof. So you still get elements that come out of the past that are fused into the modernity. And what we find, I think, with a lot of this architecture, particularly in this period in Vienna, is the beautiful combination of the modernity with the decorations on the surface. And when we get to the Wiener Werkstätte, you'll see exactly what I mean. And I understand that in Vienna now, the new Apple store is designed in this manner. So maybe they were forced to do it. Maybe they thought, you know, we want to lure people in. So in this villa, we can see the various elements, the traditional and the flat roof and the flat walls. Otto Wagner's practical style where forms were derived from construction and function. There we go. That's the Bauhaus, form and construction and all the function. It anticipated the concept of form follows function, which is a foundation in 20th century modernism. And that's the foundation which we have in architecture today. And that's the foundational structure that deals with the Bauhaus. Now, let's go on to another building. So this is what he designed for himself. And we're going to see another building, which is really very beautiful. This building was designed by Joseph Hoffmann, and it's the Palais Stocklet, but it is in Brussels. It was built by some Viennese, but I think they had a home in Brussels too. They decided we'd rather have it built in Brussels and not in Vienna. 1906, 1911, designed by Hoffmann. Here is the look. Very, very different than we've seen before. In this palace or palais, we can find the epitome of Viennese Gesamtkunstwerk. This building is a complete statement of Gesamtkunstwerk. That means that everything external and internal to this building is designed as a piece. Designed as a piece. I don't know, maybe when you've moved into a new home or a new spatial arrangement, what are you going to do with it, you know? But this is one of the major buildings that, as I said, was designed as a piece. That's why we can really use that term Gesamtkunstwerk. Now, this building survives as it is today. As I said, it was built in Brussels and not in Vienna, and a series of architects and artists with the Wiener Werkstätte were involved in putting this property together. Hoffmann was the architect and artistic mastermind behind the project, but Gustav Klimt was brought in to design the dining room, and it is an absolute Klimt masterpiece. I don't know if it's open for touring or not, but you'd want to see the modernity of the building. We're going to see the insides and that Gustav Klimt dining room, and we're going to see examples of the Kiss, which follows him in various arrangements. Now, here's the side view of the Palais Stocklet, and you can see now the clarity and definition of parts of the building. You know, it's not a big monumental block with all this ornamentation on the facade. You can see the various kinds of clarity, and with often the whitish treatment, it's gotten a little scuzzy, but then banding. So they love that. They build these white sections and then they would band them. So you have this external structure that gives definition to it. Now, I've showed you some of those interiors on purpose. So let's go inside the Palais Stocklet. That's the interior. It would be beautiful today. An entirely different spatial arrangement. We can see parts of the spatial continuity, the floors, the furniture. I mean, it's there. These are the big jumping points. These are where you say, when was modernity really brought into the fore? Well, this is a part of it. And remember, this entire building was designed as a particular piece. And it has a kind of long axis. You know, another thing, how do you perceive spaces within buildings? But in this particular case, there's a long access to it with a cross access that leads into the garden. But you have square cut pillars and yellow marble stretch uninterrupted to the very tops. It's quite wonderful, and it opens up the spaces. You can breathe. We can operate on different kinds of level. And this axis, this long axis, ends with a staircase at the very end. So the long axis with the crossing that leads into the garden. Now, let's look at the dining room of the Palais Stocklet. Here's the dining room by Gustav Klimt. And it is a masterpiece. It's one of his masterpieces. And this is part of your tour. It was done between 1905 and 1911 with walls designs by Gustav Klimt and the marble veneer and furniture by Joseph Hoffmann. So these are the great names working at that time. We can consider this room as a masterpiece by Klimt. With its ornamental mural panels, the room is a rich counterpoint to the rest of the building. This is very different. Now we're into the world of Klimt. Klimt's Stocklet frieze consisted of two almost identical walls. The dominant motif on both sides of this dining room is the tree of life, whose golden spiral-shaped branches fill the picture planes. The single standing figure on the left, we get some of these figures here, on the left wall, entitled Expectation, corresponds to the description of an embracing couple on the right called fulfillment. We're going to get to his kiss and these representations. There was an article recently where somebody was criticizing Klimt's kiss because is that a rape going on? And I said, you've got to understand the difference between ecstasy and a rape. And in ecstasy, I'm referring to consensual ecstasy, but we won't go there. But we can find these motifs used in his paintings, and on the walls you have these separate. But here is that decorative treatment that Klimt so loves, and so this is the masterpiece. If you're in Brussels and can get into it, now I want to show you the marble bathroom in the Palais Stocklet. There's no we. Oh, okay. Huh. Oh, okay. It's up in here. I'm sorry that this. What was that? Yes. Okay, we'll try it now. Hopefully we'll get, yes, it is a private home. You've got to understand the wealth these people have. I think today we have a lot of wealth, but sometimes you might want to critique taste. There's the bathroom, guys. Not bad. Not bad. A marble bathroom. I haven't seen that on any ads recently. And there's all those step-in baths for the aged. Well, I love them, by the way, because I'm a part of that world. But you have a couch to line on, you have the marble, you have it there. So this is the epitome of the stocklet marble bath and so forth. So I think you find this rather fascinating. We're gonna have some extra time for questions too. So now we're moving from the marble bath of the Palais Stocklet, again, a Samtkunstwerk, completely designed, everything, bathroom, furniture, dining room, facades, inside, garden, everything, all put together. Now we're going to see the Haus am Michaelerplatz, designed by Adolf Loos, who was interested in, I have to tell you, there was a mistake in one of the descriptions that I said. I spelled Loos as Loss. And I thought, oh my God, it's a Freudian slip. I'm right in the middle of a Freudian slip. Because Adolf Loos, for him, less was more. So less, Los, whatever, come on. It's like a whatever. We have to move away from that. So here is the house on Michaelerplatz. Now, these are breaks, guys. This is right in the middle of Vienna. And on the, so we see this particular house, the windows, and so not the windows, but the other situation were added later. It was basically very, very plain, and we'll see the plainness of it. But you have stores below and equal levels rising above. In this building, Loos had an opportunity to exploit all of his talents in one of the major locations in Vienna, a square opposite the neo-Baroque Imperial Palace. How's that for a site? You have the Imperial Palace on one side, and you have this house on the Katerplatz on the other. Modernity and the past. The facade would become an icon in architectural history and announced a new decoration. There are objections to the plainness of the facade, but its absence of decoration was part of Loos's view that ornament was a crime. He just blew apart the 19th century. Ornament was a crime. The facade was far from being stripped of decoration in that the lower part of the building was a shop and a mezzanine and covered in marble with attached columns. So there's some kind of mixing going on here at this time. This stood in marked contrast to the upper part of the building. Although offices and residences were treated differently, they coexisted in the same building. So you had offices in that on the lower part, and then you had residences above in this particular building. And this will give you a good idea. Here we have, there is the poster you can see without those window boxes. So there's the poster for the opening of Mein Haus am Michaelerplatz. There is the architect in the center, and there is another picture of the building. So I thought it was kind of nice. You can follow from the poster, the architect, and then on to this particular side. Now, we're going to be okay. We'll have time for questions. Oh my God, I'm going too fast. Think of questions. Okay, this is the coming up then will be the facade. This is the American Bar in Vienna. Have any of you been there at all? To the oh, well, of course, I hope so. This is the American Bar in Vienna, designed by Adolf Loos, not Loss. And it's a glittering sign showing the American flag runs through the length of the facade with the promise of a new world atmosphere. The Viennese were very excited by what was going on in the United States, and America suddenly was becoming rather chic, and that's what they wanted to know. So the style and use of the American bar was unknown in Vienna at the time. This did not exist in Vienna at the time. It was a new approach. It was a new and different kind of bar. Now, for Loos, architecture was subtraction. For him, you subtract. You keep going down and down, simplify, 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 and go into abstraction. This is the exterior, the way it looks today. Somebody said, I wonder if that was put on, that particular heading. And I said, no, from what I understand, and those who've been there, some of you have been there, that's what you get. So that's the exterior of it. And this is the interior. Now, this is a new development of the bar scene for the Viennese. This is the interior. And let me explain how it was put together. You haven't been in a lot of bars like this. It was designed by him. And again, it's the architecture of subtraction. It was designed as a classic English style menswear club. A men's clubs might find in London. It's totally new for the Viennese. The introduction of this bar room was known as a Stehbar, where you could stand, receive a very positive response by many of the Viennese. Those who were tuned in, they love it. But it's a different approach. You don't go and sit down and that. We'll be talking about the coffee houses ad nauseum. But this is a Stehbar where you could stand and be served, something that we accept, Americans did, and the British accepted as totally modern. And this is what it was made of. Onyx panels allow a milky light to penetrate the interior with its monumental furnishings, while mirrors create an optical illusion of a much larger interior, enhanced by mahogany and marble, an interesting contrast of all of these particular materials and particular colors. So it's these two different worlds. So looking at what Loos is doing, looking at the architecture and so forth, and looking at some of these other buildings, these are the breaks. This is the new world. And it was exciting. America was beginning to contribute to certain things in regard to Europe, and it was something that they were very, very interested in. Now, I have a few other comments before we'll take a brief ending with maybe some questions. Vienna 1900 was a city where the cultural elite were involved in a series of personal contacts and interactions among the major figures of Viennese cultural intellectual life. For example, Gustav Mahler had himself psychoanalyzed by Sigmund Freud. They turned to be very, very good friends. We're going to get to Freud soon, and I'm going to explain a production I designed at Stanford of one of the Freud great cases. So Mahler was very interested in what was going on, so he had him analyzed by Sigmund Freud. Now, Arnold Schoenberg took painting lessons from the artist Richard Gerstel, excuse me, and Gustav Klimt painted a portrait of Ludwig Wittgenstein's sister. So they were all a part of these worlds. They knew each other. It was upper middle class, heavily Jewish, and they all interacted together, but they were breaking through. They were friends, So Klimt said, I want to paint of my sister, so I want you to do it, and so forth. So all these names, the Wittgensteins, Freud and all that, simply were coming together. And so this was a part of this new mixture that was going on. So what we have moved from that very early treatment of the Habsburg Empire and what it represented. Oh, by the way, I understand that the voice that was over destroying the Spanish writing school, somebody forgot to mute. And I don't know if you could hear it. I didn't hear it, but I think it was a guy talking to his wife about the hot tub. Well, whatever. We're now entering a realm of surreality. But anyway, I thought, what? Would you please move it? We're looking at these gorgeous houses and some horses, excuse me, and we simply don't want to do that. Well, we do have in this opening arrangement time for questions. So you can throw whatever you want back at me. I answer like a surreal ping pong ball. Yeah, we have about 8 or 9 minutes. We're finishing a little early. I wanted to give you time to maybe say, I don't quite understand what you're saying, but let's see if there are questions. Yes.
I have a microphone here, so I'll put this to
Yeah,
you.
we have a microphone.
What is the painting at the back?
The painting,
At the back?
I'm not exactly certain. I could find out, but the painting on the back wall,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd have to find out. I have to recheck it. Yes. Yeah. I'm not certain, but it's an elegant interior. How many bars have you been through like this?
I have a question. Did this modern style feed into Art Deco, which followed?
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. So talk about a parrot. I turned it into a parrot. Modernity would lead into the Bauhaus in Berlin. That's another. When I gave my Berlin class on dancing on the volcano, that was over in Berlin, the Bauhaus and so forth. And also Art Deco style, which is very important. That was a part of the Paris class that I gave. And a wonderful Art Moderne. I think we really don't call it Art Deco, but in the United States, we called it Art Moderne. One of the buildings you might know and recognize is 450 Sutter. Do any of you go to 450 Sutter? Yes, yes, exactly. So that is the sort of art moderne style. And what I love about that particular building is the Mayan influenced entry hall. That is a Mayan corbelled roof to that entry hall. And it's a beautiful statement of the modern at that particular time. So yes, if you want to pick up a little of that, go into 450 Sutter and the entry hall and think of the corbel arches. I must have been crazy as an undergraduate, but I once did an art history paper on Mayan corbelled arches. I mean, forget it. So anyway, we have time for a couple of more questions. Yes, please. Oh, and in the back, and then we'll come to the front. Yes.
so I would like to know, is Art Deco and
Yes.
Art Nouveau, is that the same, or is
No, they're
they are
very,
just
very
a
different.
different
Very different. Art Nouveau is the curvilinear organic tendrils of Art Nouveau. It's almost an organic feeling. Art Deco takes place in the 1920s. We already have the simplicity beginning of the Bauhaus, and Art Deco was part of a great decorative arts exhibition that was held in Paris in the mid-1920s. They are separate styles, but the Art Nouveau, you'll find, for example, in the some of the metro stations in Paris. But it's the curvilinear, it's the organic, and here we are seeing the squares, the rectangles, and all of that. It's a very different aesthetic. Although we've seen in transition, like that one metro stop, that there's a kind of still lingering holdover. So stylistically, you have to pull apart various pieces. Yes, here in the front.
Jackie, one moment.
I mean, for elevators and so forth.
Yes.
Well, all these buildings, these elaborately carved buildings, if you've been in some of these buildings, they have central elevators, those birdcage elevators. So they came into play at an early time. And I know that I have friends that own a building in Berlin, and there are no elevators, just staircases and 4 levels. But they had built on the outside an external elevator. and so forth. So you're going to find combinations, but think of the bird cages, elevators that are part of those buildings. So I think it's a very mixed situation. And I really don't know when the opening, closing doors and those elevators come into play. They're still kind of the bird cages. One or two other questions.
Is there a analog in Vienna for the Bauhaus in terms of like interior design and industrial design, or an institute where one could go see some of the design?
Well, you're getting
development?
some of the early Bauhaus, even like in that bank. I mean, that's architectural simplicity in the geometry. So you're getting pieces of that. But for the Bauhaus, you really have to go more to, like, say, Berlin. I mean, there are a few examples in Vienna, but you really probably have to go to Berlin. By the way, in Vienna, they have a full museum filled with furniture pieces. And those furniture pieces were all owned by the Habsburg court, because as they moved from one palace to another, they had to have it outfitted. So they sent the furniture ahead from this warehouse in order to outfit the palace because of the guests who would soon be appearing. So yeah, in terms of the Bauhaus, I'd go more into Germany. Vienna has maybe a few examples, but not much. No, that I know of. I could be wrong. Well, we still have a few more minutes. I've got to slow down.
Any final question, comments?
Or comments. You can do whatever you want.
Yes. One more.
What does the term secession mean?
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Oh.
We're going to get to the secessionists. That's the big break. That's the big break. And you're going to see the secessionist building. That's coming up, with Klimt and Sheila and all of the others. That will be coming up in the next lecture. So what I want you to do, I know I gave you 18 pages of chokeability, but it's there. It's all there. So take a look at the headings for the various gatherings. And I really want you to look at page 6 to show the mental states of mind of the Viennese. I mean, it was just unbelievably crazy. Maybe like some of our states today, I don't know. But take a look at those. And I've given you a kind of chronology in that. The skeleton of the class is in those 18 pages. So you might want to just follow it before we meet. But then we're with the secessionists, we're with Klimt, we're with Sheila, basically Klimt and Sheila. And that's another entirely different world. And we're going to discuss concepts of beginning nudity, because one of the last classes I'm going to present to you is the nude or the naked in Viennese modernity. And then everything becomes together. The medical, the artistic, the dance, it's all interrelated. So it's this, when I use that term, Vienna 1900, a crucible of creativity, it was all there. Everything was going on in this city, and filled with all of these nationalities contributing to that. So anyway, I think we're okay. I'm letting you out a couple of minutes early. Any other questions? Any other questions that any other comments that you want? I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll just tell you one comment about comments. I've been involved in the world of theater for about 60 years. And if you're in theater, it's the best kind of psychoanalytical treatment you ever can get. And I recommend it because you're in a group of people, you're creatively putting something together. You might hate each other, but the curtain is going up. So it's better than going to a therapist. If you can operate on the theatrical stage, you're set for life. Okay, I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna remind you. Thank you. Ends at 11:40.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, well, I'll get it for next time. I apologize. I landed a little bit too late. I got it ended at 11:40. Mi piace, mi piace.
So people are building these things, like now in San Francisco, all over, we have these departments.
Mhm.
And you have to go through a whole process. Are the people just wealthy and they just grab land and do whatever they want?
Well, they generally can in San Francisco. I mean, there's certain restrictions in that. Oh, they could do it. That money was still there. but still, you could still do a lot. Wealthy, wealthy. My God, I've got to remember the class ends at 40. I thought it was 10 too. But my mind, well, I will know next time. I planned on stopping at 10:40. Well, it's an age situation with me. I know we're all in it. We're all in the same creative boat.
You like going to the Goya gallery?
Oh my God, that's heaven. That's heaven. I'm going to send everybody to the Neue Gallery. Some of the books that I have a story to tell you.